When we talk about what a controller is in Laravel's MVC architecture, we are really talking about the core part of the framework that connects the user's request with the actual logic of your application. Whenever a client sends an HTTP request, such as visiting a web page or submitting a form, that request first reaches the route. The route acts like a traffic signal that decides where the request should go next. Instead of putting all the logic directly inside the route file, Laravel sends this request to a controller, which works as the middle layer of the entire MVC pattern. The controller's job is to process the request, talk to the model if necessary, and decide what kind of response should be returned to the user. If the controller needs data, it communicates with the model, which is responsible for handling all database operations through Eloquent. The model fetches, updates, or saves data and returns clean data objects back to the controller. After receiving this data, the controller processes it and then sends it to the view. The view is responsible for how the information is shown to the user, whether that is an HTML blade template or a structured JSON response for an API. Once the view prepares the final output, the controller returns that response back through the route, which finally delivers it to the client's browser. This entire cycle keeps your code clean, organized, and easy to maintain because each part has its own responsibility. The model handles the data, the view handles the presentation, and the controller handles the application logic. Without controllers, all logic would be forced inside the routes file, making the project messy, unstructured, and extremely difficult to manage as it grows. Controllers bring proper structure and separation of concerns, ensuring your Laravel application remains scalable, readable, and professional.
In Laravel, every controller that you create is stored inside the folder path app/http/controllers, which acts as the centralized home for all the logic that handles incoming requests. This organization helps Laravel maintain a clean and predictable structure, making it easy for developers to locate and manage their controllers as the application grows. Inside this folder, there is a special file called controller.php. This file is not just another controller, it is the base controller class that all other controllers automatically extend. By inheriting from this base class, every custom controller you create instantly gains access to powerful helper methods provided by Laravel. These helpers include functions like middleware, which allows you to apply authentication, throttling, or other filters to specific routes, and authorize, which handles permissions and ensures that only allowed users can perform certain actions. When you create your own controller, such as a home controller, it extends the base controller class, meaning it inherits all the built-in behavior and methods that Laravel offers. This inheritance system keeps your controllers lightweight, clean, and focused only on the logic that is unique to your application. Instead of rewriting common features again and again, Laravel gives them to you automatically through this shared base class. Because all controllers live inside the same directory, it becomes easy to manage them, follow naming conventions, and scale your project in an organized, maintainable way. This structured approach reinforces Laravel's philosophy of clean code, separation of concerns, and developer-friendly architecture.
To make working with controllers faster and more efficient, Laravel provides a built-in command line tool called Artisan, which can automatically generate controller files for you. Instead of manually creating a new PHP file and writing the basic class structure yourself, you simply open your terminal and type the command php artisan make controller post controller. The moment you run this command, Artisan instantly creates a fully prepared controller file inside the app/http/controllers directory, following Laravel's organized folder structure. This saves time and ensures that every controller you create follows the correct naming conventions and namespace rules. Once generated, your new controller file, such as postcontroller.php, comes with a clean class skeleton that extends the base controller class. This means it already inherits important Laravel features like middleware handling, authorization helpers, and request processing capabilities. Inside this controller, you will add different methods like index, show, create, store, and others, depending on what actions your application needs. Each method will handle a specific type of request, making your application logic clear and well-structured. Artisan's ability to automatically generate controllers not only speeds up development, but also reduces errors and keeps your project consistent. It reinforces Laravel's philosophy of writing clean, organized code while making the overall workflow smooth and beginner-friendly. By using Artisan, developers can focus more on building features and less on repetitive setup tasks, allowing the application to grow efficiently and professionally.
Laravel also provides a special type of controller called an Invokable controller, designed specifically for single-action endpoints. Instead of creating a full controller with multiple methods like index, show, or create, an invokable controller focuses on just one task. To generate one, you use the command php artisan make controller show profile controller invokable. The moment this command runs, Laravel automatically creates a controller file inside the app/http/controllers directory. But this file looks different from a normal controller. Instead of multiple methods, it contains only one special method called invoke. This method is automatically triggered whenever the controller is used in a route. Because the entire controller revolves around this single action, it becomes perfect for simple, one-purpose operations, such as showing a user profile, verifying an email, or handling a quick calculation. The structure is clean, minimal, and easy to understand. In your route file, instead of calling a specific method, you simply reference the controller class itself, like route get profile show profile controller class. Laravel instantly knows to execute the invoke method. This approach results in cleaner routes, shorter syntax, and controllers that stay focused on one responsibility at a time. Invokable controllers are especially helpful when you want to avoid unnecessary method clutter and keep small endpoints organized and easy to maintain. They beautifully reflect Laravel's philosophy of elegant, expressive, and purposeful code. Laravel resource controllers take the concept of controllers to an even more powerful level by automatically generating all the essential methods needed for a complete CRUD system. Instead of manually writing separate routes and controller methods for listing data, creating new records, updating existing ones, or deleting entries, Laravel lets you generate a full RESTful controller with a single Artisan command. When you run php artisan make controller postcontroller-resource, Laravel instantly creates a controller file inside the app/http/controllers directory, but this time the file includes a full set of predefined method stubs that follow REST conventions. These methods include index, which displays a list of all resources, create, which shows a form for adding new data, store, which handles the post request to save new data, show, which displays a specific record, edit, which provides a form for editing data, update, which processes put or patch requests to modify existing records, and finally, destroy, which handles delete requests to remove data. Each method aligns perfectly with HTTP verbs and predictable endpoint patterns, making your entire API or web application more structured and professional. To make things even cleaner, Laravel provides a shortcut for route registration. Instead of writing 7 separate routes manually, you simply use route::resource posts postcontroller::class. With this single line, Laravel automatically generates all 7 CRUD routes, each mapped to the correct controller method and HTTP verb. The result is a clean, predictable URL structure, such as posts, post/create, post/id, post/id/edit, and so on, without any extra effort. This approach drastically reduces boilerplate code, keeps your routes file tidy, and ensures that your project follows standard REST API design patterns. Resource controllers are ideal for features like blog posts, users, products, categories, or anything else that requires full create, read, update, delete functionality.
They help you stay consistent, organized, and efficient as your application continues to grow, making them one of Laravel's most valuable tools for building scalable web applications.
Connecting routes to controllers is one of the most important concepts in Laravel because it defines how every user action on your website or API reaches the appropriate logic behind the scenes. Laravel organizes routes into two main files, web.php and api.php. The web routes file is designed for traditional web pages that return HTML and interact with sessions, CSRF protection, and authentication. In contrast, the API routes file is meant for JSON-based API responses, where communication is stateless and often protected using token authentication and rate limiting. Regardless of which file you use, the flow works the same. A URL pattern is defined, and Laravel maps it to a specific controller method using the clean syntax controller class, method. When a request hits a route, such as /posts, Laravel immediately forwards it to the assigned method inside the specified controller. This creates a clear, organized flow. The user visits a URL, the route matches it, and the controller method executes the response logic. Laravel also handles route parameters with elegant automation. For example, if your route is defined as /posts with ID and a user visits /posts 110, Laravel automatically extracts the value 110 from the URL and injects it into the controller method's parameter. So a method like show ID instantly receives the value without needing any manual parsing. This automatic parameter binding works for any pattern, whether ID, slug, or even multiple values in more complex routes. Laravel maps parameters strictly by name, ensuring that whatever appears in the URL corresponds exactly to the variable in the controller method. This eliminates unnecessary boilerplate code and keeps everything readable, predictable, and consistent. This intelligent routing system allows developers to focus on application logic instead of handling low-level input extraction. With support for optional parameters, multiple parameters, and clean mapping to controller actions, Laravel makes the entire routing flow, from URL to controller, simple, powerful, and beautifully structured.
One of the most common and essential responsibilities of a Laravel controller is returning views, which means generating HTML pages for the browser using Blade templates. The entire flow begins when a user makes a request from their browser, maybe by clicking a link or visiting a page URL. That request first travels to the route, which determines which controller method should handle it. When the route points to something like post controller at index, Laravel calls that method inside the controller. The controller then retrieves the necessary data, often by communicating with a model. For example, it might fetch the latest posts from the database through the post model. Once the controller has the data, it passes that data to a Blade view, which is a special templating file responsible for rendering HTML. This is usually done using the view function, where the controller specifies which Blade file to load and what variables to send to it. Laravel makes this data transfer smooth by allowing helpers like compact, which neatly packages variables so they can be used inside the view. After the Blade file receives the data, it uses templating syntax, such as curly braces, to display the information dynamically inside the HTML. The Blade engine processes the template, generates clean HTML output, and sends it back to the browser as the final rendered page. This complete flow, browser request, route matching, controller processing, view rendering, demonstrates how the controller acts like a bridge between the application's data and the user interface. The controller pulls the data from the model, prepares it, and hands it off to the Blade template, ensuring that the user sees a clean and organized page. For example, if the controller fetches a list of posts, that list is passed to the index.blade.php file, where the posts are looped over and displayed beautifully in the user interface. The final result is a dynamic, data-driven web page that updates automatically based on the content in the database. This division of responsibilities keeps every part of the application clean, predictable, and easy to maintain. Controllers focus on logic, models focus on data, and Blade views focus on presentation, making Laravel's MVC structure incredibly efficient and intuitive.
When working with APIs in Laravel, controllers behave differently compared to traditional web controllers because API routes are designed to return data, not HTML. Instead of serving Blade templates, these routes send structured information in JSON format, which is the standard way modern applications exchange data.
The entire process begins when a client, such as a mobile app, a single-page application, or an external system, makes a request to the server. This request is handled inside the routes/api.php file, where all API endpoints are defined. Since API routes are stateless, they do not use sessions or cookies, making them perfect for fast, scalable, token-based interactions. When an API route points to a controller method, Laravel immediately executes that method, which then prepares the data to be returned as a JSON response. Inside the controller, returning JSON is incredibly simple and expressive. Using a method like response.json, Laravel allows you to format the data in a clean structure, such as returning a status message along with a specific post. What makes Laravel even more powerful is that if you return an eloquent model or a collection directly, such as returning $post, Laravel automatically transforms it into JSON without requiring any extra formatting. This auto-serialization feature ensures consistent, readable output for all API consumers. Once the controller prepares the JSON, it is sent back to the client, where it can be displayed inside a mobile UI, processed by a JavaScript front-end, or consumed by another back-end system. This streamlined API response flow, request, route, controller method, JSON serialization, and final UI rendering shows how Laravel simplifies the entire data delivery process. The predictable structure, stateless behavior, and built-in JSON helpers make Laravel one of the most efficient frameworks for building REST APIs, mobile backends, and modern interactive applications. Redirects in Laravel controllers play a crucial role in guiding users to the correct page after performing an action, especially during form submissions such as creating, updating, or deleting records. Instead of returning a view directly after an operation, controllers commonly redirect the user to another route. This ensures a smoother user experience and prevents issues like accidental form resubmission when refreshing the page. The process begins when a user submits a form, triggering a controller method such as store, where the data is validated and saved. Once the operation is complete, Laravel uses the redirect helper to send the user to a different page. When the developer uses redirect.route_posts.indexed, Laravel generates an automatic HTTP redirect response and sends the user to the named route posts.index. One of the benefits of named routes is that if the actual URL changes in the future, only the route definition must be updated, not every redirect across the application. Redirects also work beautifully with flash messages, which are temporary session values that last only for the next request. These are commonly used to display alerts such as post created successfully after an action is completed. When you use with success post created successfully, Laravel stores this message in the session, and it becomes available once the redirected page loads. The blade view then retrieves and displays this message, giving the user helpful visual feedback that the operation was successful. This entire flow, user submits form, controller processes logic, redirect executes, and flash message appears, is a foundational pattern in Laravel known as post-redirect get, or PRG. It keeps the user interface consistent, prevents duplicate form submissions, and maintains clear communication between the system and the user. Redirects can also send users back to the previous page using back, or to any specific URL using to or URL functions. With its elegant syntax and built-in flash support, Laravel makes redirecting intuitive, reliable, and essential for creating polished, user-friendly applications. In Laravel, every response sent back to the client, whether it's HTML, JSON, or plain text, is made up of three essential parts: the response body, the response headers, and the HTTP status code. Together, these elements tell the browser or API consumer exactly what kind of information is being delivered and how it should be handled. When a controller method returns something like response hello, 200, Laravel constructs a complete HTTP response object. The first part, the response body, is simply the content being returned, in this case, the word hello. The second part, the status code, communicates the overall result of the request. A status code like 200 means OK, indicating that everything worked successfully. Laravel makes this simple by letting you specify the code directly as the second parameter in the response function. The third and equally important component is the response header.
Headers describe extra information about the response, such as its format, caching rules, security policies, and more. For example, adding a header like header content type text plain tells the client that the response should be treated as plain text rather than HTML or JSON. This becomes very important in APIs, where clients must know exactly what kind of data they are dealing with. Once the response is built, Laravel sends it back to the browser or external application where the client displays or processes it accordingly. Behind the scenes, servers read the headers, interpret the status code, and return the response body to the user interface. This streamlined workflow ensures that communication between the client and server remains clear, structured, and efficient. With Laravel's expressive response system, developers can customize every part of the returned output, making it easy to build APIs, serve files, define custom response types, or control exactly how clients interpret each request.
Dependency injection in Laravel is one of the framework's most powerful and elegant features because it completely removes the need for developers to manually create objects inside their controller methods. Instead of writing something like new request, Laravel automatically provides the required object the moment your controller method needs it. This automation is handled by Laravel's service container, which acts as a central system that manages classes, bindings, singletons, and object instances. Whenever an HTTP request enters the application, Laravel converts that raw input into a fully structured request object containing everything the user submitted, such as form fields, headers, query parameters, and files. When a controller method is written with type hinting, such as store request request, Laravel recognizes the type being asked for and automatically injects the corresponding object into the method. This is what makes dependency injection so seamless. You simply specify what you need, and Laravel provides it instantly. Inside the controller, you can now access all incoming data using expressive helper methods like request input title or request input content. Because the service container handles the creation and preparation of the request object, your controllers remain clean, testable, and easy to maintain. There is no hidden setup or complicated configuration required. Laravel reads the method signature, resolves the dependency, and injects the object at runtime. This approach also makes your application more modular and flexible, because any dependency, not just the request object, can be injected the same way, whether it's services, repositories, or custom classes. Dependency injection ensures that controllers focus strictly on their logic rather than on object construction or low-level setup. The result is a modern, maintainable architecture where every component is neatly separated and Laravel's service container quietly handles all the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
Beyond injecting the request object, Laravel's dependency injection system becomes even more powerful when you begin injecting custom service classes into your controllers. This approach allows you to move complex logic, such as database operations, business rules, filtering, or external API handling, out of the controller and into a dedicated service class. The moment you type hint a service like post service in the controller's constructor, Laravel's service container automatically resolves and injects it without requiring any manual instantiation. Inside the container, Laravel keeps track of bindings, singletons, and instances, so when a controller needs a specific dependency, the container simply builds it and delivers it on demand. This results in a cleaner and more decoupled architecture, because the controller no longer depends on the underlying implementation. Instead, it depends on an abstraction, a reusable service class that can be tested independently, reused in multiple places, and swapped out easily if your logic ever changes. When the post controller's constructor receives post-service $post-service, Laravel injects the ready-to-use service into the controller automatically. From that point forward, the controller can call methods on the service, such as this.postservice.all, without worrying about how the data is retrieved or processed. This creates a beautiful separation of concerns. Controllers focus on handling requests and returning responses, while services focus on heavy business logic. The result is an application that is significantly easier to maintain, scale, and test. With dependency injection, you can mock services during testing, update business logic in one place, and keep controllers lightweight and readable. Laravel's automatic injection system makes this possible with minimal effort from the developer, enabling modern architectural best practices across the entire application. In short, injecting services into controllers transforms your codebase into a well-organized modular ecosystem where each part has a clear and focused purpose. Laravel's route model binding is one of the framework's most elegant features because it allows models to be automatically injected into controller methods based on the value present in the route. Instead of manually writing queries like post find ID, Laravel handles this step automatically, giving you cleaner, simpler, and more expressive controllers. The process begins the moment a user accesses a URL such as yourwebsite.com/posts/12. The number 12 becomes the route parameter, and Laravel checks the route definition, such as route get posts/post equals postController::class show. Since the placeholder is named post and the controller method expects post $post, Laravel knows to interpret that parameter as the ID of a post model. Behind the scenes, Laravel automatically performs a lookup equivalent to post find or fail 12 and injects the resulting post model instance directly into the controller method. This eliminates manual database queries and ensures that if the model is not found, Laravel automatically returns a 404 response without any additional code. This system follows a simple rule. The route placeholder name must match the controller argument name for automatic injection to occur. But Laravel goes even further by supporting custom route key binding, allowing you to use more meaningful identifiers such as slugs instead of numeric IDs. For example, if your URL is yourwebsite.com/posts/myfirstpost, you can tell Laravel to use the slug column instead of ID by defining a method called getRouteKeyName inside the post model that returns slug. With that small change, Laravel automatically fetches the post where slug equals myFirstPost, injects it into the controller, and continues the request flow seamlessly. This works not only with slugs, but also with UUIDs, hashes, or any custom unique column you define. Route model binding results in controllers that are far cleaner, easier to read, and more maintainable, while also improving reliability through built-in 404 handling. It represents Laravel's philosophy perfectly, reducing boilerplate, increasing expressiveness, and letting the framework handle repetitive work behind the scenes.
Validation in Laravel is an essential part of building secure and reliable applications because it ensures that the data coming from the user is clean, correct, and safe before it reaches your database or business logic. Laravel provides two powerful ways to validate incoming data inside controllers. Quick inline validation using $request.validate, and the more structured approach using dedicated form request classes. With quick validation, everything happens directly inside the controller method. When you call $request.validate, Laravel automatically runs the validation rules before any further logic executes. If validation fails, the framework redirects the user back to the previous page with all error messages and their old input already filled in, without you writing any additional code. If validation succeeds, Laravel returns an array of sanitized, guaranteed safe data that you can pass straight into your model, such as post::create validated. This method is simple, fast, and ideal for small forms or quick prototypes. However, as an application grows, placing validation logic directly inside controllers can make the code cluttered and harder to maintain. That's where form request classes shine. By generating a custom request class using PHP Artisan make request store post request, Laravel gives you a dedicated file where all validation rules, messages, and even authorization checks can live. This keeps controllers extremely clean because the validation happens automatically before the controller method is executed. Inside your form request class, the rules method defines everything that needs to be checked, such as requiring a title or setting a minimum character length. When you type hint the class in your controller method, like store post request $request, Laravel injects the validated object automatically. From that point on, all you need inside the controller is a single simple line, such as post::create $request.validated. This approach not only keeps your controllers lightweight, but also creates a reusable, centralized, and testable validation layer that scales beautifully in larger applications. Overall, quick validation is perfect for small tasks, while form request classes provide a cleaner and more maintainable structure for bigger projects.
Both methods give you automatic error handling, automatic redirects on failure, and a safe set of validated fields. With Laravel's validation system, you gain a powerful shield that protects your database and enhances your user experience, all while keeping your code expressive, elegant, and highly maintainable.
Middleware in Laravel acts as a powerful filtering layer that sits between the incoming HTTP request and the controller action that ultimately handles that request. Think of middleware as a checkpoint system. Every request passes through these filters where Laravel can perform tasks such as checking authentication, verifying permissions, applying rate limits, or modifying data before it reaches the controller. Once the controller finishes its work, middleware can also run afterward to adjust the response if needed. This flexible filtering mechanism allows your application to maintain security, consistency, and structure at every stage of the request lifecycle. Middleware can be applied in two main places, inside route definitions or directly within controllers. Applying middleware in routes is straightforward. You simply chain the .middleware off call to any route. This ensures that only authenticated users can access that route. But as your application grows, attaching middleware individually to each route can clutter your routes file. This is where controller-level middleware becomes extremely valuable. Inside a controller's constructor, you can declare this .middleware off, and Laravel will automatically apply the authentication middleware to every method in that controller. You can also fine-tune it using only to limit the middleware to specific actions such as edit and update, or use except to exclude certain actions from filtering. This gives you precise control over which actions require certain permissions or checks, making your application more organized and secure. Laravel's middleware system shines especially in CRUD controllers where different actions often require different levels of authorization. For example, viewing a post might be public, but editing or deleting it might require special permissions. Middleware like can, edit, post can be placed inside the controller's constructor to enforce these rules cleanly and consistently. With middleware centralized in controllers, route files stay clean, security rules stay organized, and business logic remains separated from access control. This layered approach not only improves code maintainability, but also ensures that your application enforces the right rules at the right time, every time a request enters the system. Middleware is one of Laravel's most important architectural tools, enabling developers to implement robust, scalable, and secure filtering with minimal effort.
As your Laravel application grows, the number of routes can increase rapidly, especially for CRUD controllers or admin sections. To keep your route files clean, organized, and easy to manage, Laravel offers route groups, a powerful feature that allows you to apply shared logic, such as prefixes, middleware, and controllers, to multiple routes at once. Instead of repeating the same configuration over and over again, route groups let you declare those elements once and reuse them across an entire block of routes. This immediately improves readability, reduces duplication, and keeps your web.php and api.php files tidy and professional. One of the cleanest ways to use route groups is with controller groups. Instead of writing the controller name next to every single route, you wrap your routes inside a group and declare the controller once using route.controller postcontroller class. Inside this group, you only specify the route paths and method names, resulting in a much more structured and easy-to-scan route definition. This approach is especially helpful when a single controller handles multiple related actions, such as listing posts, creating posts, or storing new data. You write less code, reduce the chance of typos, and make future maintenance significantly easier. Route groups become even more powerful when combined with prefixes and middleware. Suppose you're building an admin panel. You can wrap the entire section in route.prefix, admin, middleware, auth, is admin, so that every route inside the group automatically inherits the admin URL structure and the necessary security checks. This transforms what could have been a messy and repetitive block of routes into a clean, modular structure where the prefix, middleware, and controller are declared once, and each route inside focuses solely on its purpose. The difference is striking. Without groups, route files become long, duplicated, and harder to read. With groups, everything becomes centralized, elegant, and easy to maintain.
Route groups are ideal for versioned APIs, admin dashboards, user settings areas, or any modular part of your application that uses repeated structures. By leveraging controller route groups, you build a cleaner architecture, keep your route files neat, and streamline development for both small and large Laravel applications. This technique embodies Laravel's philosophy perfectly: expressive, elegant, and highly maintainable code.
In Laravel, web controllers and API controllers serve very different purposes, even though they both operate within the same MVC structure. Web controllers are designed primarily for applications that return HTML-based user interfaces, such as blade templates used for dashboards, forms, and pages that interact with session data. API controllers, on the other hand, are optimized for mobile apps, single-page applications, and systems that communicate using JSON. Understanding the distinction between the two is essential because each controller type lives in a different routing environment, handles requests differently, and responds with different data formats. Web routes are defined inside routes/web.php, where Laravel enables session handling, CSRF protection, and stateful browser interactions. These routes typically return HTML, making them perfect for traditional multi-page web applications. API routes, defined inside routes/api.php, are stateless by design. They do not use sessions or CSRF tokens, and every response is sent in JSON format. This stateless approach makes API routes extremely efficient and ideal for external clients, JavaScript frameworks, and third-party integrations. Laravel even applies rate limiting to API routes by default, helping protect endpoints from excessive or abusive traffic. The controllers themselves reflect these differences. Web controllers usually return views using blade templates and can optionally return JSON when needed. They rely on server-side state, such as authentication sessions, to maintain information between requests. API controllers, however, return JSON as their primary response and avoid anything related to HTML rendering. When you create a controller using PHP Artisan make controller, Laravel generates all the standard methods for CRUD operations. But if you append the --API flag, Laravel creates a lighter version of the controller containing only API-relevant methods, leaving out UI-focused methods such as create and edit that generate HTML forms. The responses further illustrate the contrast. A web controller responds with something like return view of posts.index compact with posts, while an API controller returns structured JSON such as return response, JSON, posts is posts. Knowing when to use each controller type is crucial for building scalable, well-architected applications. Web controllers are best suited for blade-based UIs, login pages, forms, dashboards, and any page rendered for a browser. API controllers excel in mobile apps, SPAs built with Vue or React, integrations with other services, and RESTful API endpoints. By choosing the correct controller type, you ensure that your application remains efficient, consistent, and aligned with modern development practices.
Traits in Laravel provide a powerful and elegant way to share reusable logic across multiple controllers without duplicating code. Instead of copying the same methods into different controllers, making your application harder to maintain, traits allow you to define functionality once and reuse it anywhere, simply by importing it. Traits act like modular building blocks. They bundle together methods that perform a specific responsibility, such as handling file uploads, logging activity, formatting responses, or managing shared helper functions. By using traits, your controllers stay clean, focused, and easier to read, while your shared logic remains centralized and consistent across the entire application. For example, imagine you have multiple controllers that need the ability to upload images. Without traits, each controller would require its own upload image method. And if you ever needed to change that logic, you would have to update it in every place manually. With a trait, such as handles image uploads, you define the upload method once and then simply include it inside any controller using the useHandlesImageUpload statement. Immediately, the controller gains access to that reusable functionality, eliminating repetition and dramatically simplifying maintenance. If the upload behavior ever needs adjustments, updating the trait
updates the behavior for all controllers at once. Traits also support clean architecture and development best practices. They embody the DRY principle, don't repeat yourself, by preventing duplicated code across controllers. They promote modular coding, allowing you to group related behavior into focused, well-named traits that can be reused in many parts of your application. This leads to faster development because adding shared features to multiple controllers becomes as simple as importing a trait. And finally, traits improve maintenance. When logic lives in a single centralized location, troubleshooting and enhancements become easier and more reliable. Best practices suggest using traits for shared, controller-specific behavior, not for entire large services, and keeping each trait focused on a single responsibility. Name traits descriptively, such as handles uploads, logs activity, or formats API responses, so their purpose is instantly clear. Keep controllers lightweight, delegating heavy or repeated logic to traits. By following these patterns, traits help your Laravel controller stay elegant, maintainable, and highly scalable, allowing you to build professional-grade applications with clear code boundaries and effortless reuse.
When working with Laravel controllers, following best practices is essential for keeping your application clean, scalable, and easy to maintain. One of the most important principles is to keep controllers thin. Controllers should not contain heavy business logic or complex operations. Instead, they should simply coordinate the request flow, receiving the request, passing work to the appropriate service or model, and returning a response. By offloading complex tasks to dedicated services, jobs, or actions, your controllers remain lightweight and focused entirely on handling HTTP concepts such as input, output, redirects, and responses. Another vital practice is to use form request classes for validation. Instead of placing validation rules directly inside controller methods, moving them into separate request classes creates a cleaner architecture. These classes encapsulate validation logic, make the rules reusable, support custom messages, and improve testability. This keeps controllers free from clutter and ensures validation remains consistent across the application. Controllers should also be named clearly and descriptively so developers immediately understand their purpose. Names like user controller, post controller, or admin post controller create clarity and maintain consistency. Organizing controllers using namespaces, such as grouping admin controllers under app HTTP controllers admin, helps separate different areas of the application and enhances readability. Using route model binding is another recommended practice because it simplifies controller dependencies by automatically injecting the correct model instance based on the route parameter. This not only reduces boilerplate code, but also ensures cleaner logic and built-in 404 behavior. Similarly, avoid writing complex database queries inside controllers. Such logic belongs in models, query scopes, or dedicated query classes. This separation keeps controllers readable and focused on their true purpose. A core best practice is the single responsibility principle. Every controller should be responsible for only one primary area of functionality. Splitting large controllers into smaller, focused ones, like separating login and registration into their own controllers, makes your code far easier to understand and maintain. Finally, use traits for shared controller logic. Traits allow you to extract and reuse methods that multiple controllers need, such as file uploads, image processing, or formatting helpers. This reduces duplication and centralizes shared behavior in one place. Following these best practices results in controllers that are clean, expressive, easy to test, and highly maintainable, perfectly aligning with Laravel's philosophy of elegant, structured, and scalable application development.
In Laravel, building a full CRUD system follows a clear and structured flow that begins with the database and ends with a rendered view in the browser. The process starts at step 1 with creating a model and migration, using a command like php artisan make model post-m. This generates both the model file, which represents your database table in code, and a migration file, where you define the columns that store your data. Once the migration is configured, you run it to create the table in your database. Next, in step 2, you generate a controller using the resource flag, php artisan make controller post controller -- resource. A resource controller comes preloaded with all 7 essential CRUD methods: index, create, store, show, edit, update, and destroy. These serve as the foundation for handling every interaction a user may have with your data, from viewing posts to creating new ones or deleting existing entries. In step 3, you define the routes that connect HTTP requests to these controller methods. Laravel makes this extremely easy with route resource post controller class. With a single line, Laravel automatically maps all the RESTful endpoints to their respective controller actions. This eliminates repetitive route definitions and ensures consistent, predictable URLs for your application. Once the routes are in place, step 4 involves implementing the logic inside each controller method. For example, index.retrieves and returns a list of posts through a view, while create displays the form for adding new content. The store method handles form submission, including validation and saving data. The show and edit methods fetch a specific post, often using route model binding, and display the appropriate view. The update method saves changes to existing data, and destroy deletes a record. Each method plays a specific role in the CRUD lifecycle, ensuring the flow of data remains organized and consistent. Finally, step 5 completes the process with blade views. These templates receive data from the controller, often through compact, and render it beautifully on the browser. Views like posts.index, post.create, and post.show display the results of each controller action. Once the cycle is complete, the user can interact with the application seamlessly, moving between listing, creating, editing, and viewing data. This full CRUD flow showcases Laravel's strength, a clean, predictable, and efficient pipeline from database to browser. Each layer, model, controller, route, and view work together to create an elegant, developer-friendly experience.
Once you understand how Laravel controllers work, the next step is to build confidence through practical, hands-on exercises. The best way to truly master controllers is to develop progressively, starting with simple examples and gradually layering on more advanced features. Begin with basic controllers, such as creating a simple home controller that returns a view with some data. This helps you get comfortable with the controller structure, the return view syntax, and the flow between routes, controllers, and views. After that foundation, move on to resource controllers, which form the heart of CRUD development in Laravel. Creating something like a product controller using the resource flag gives you all 7 RESTful methods automatically. From there, practice manually implementing each CRUD action: index, create, store, show, edit, update, and destroy. This step teaches you how each part of the CRUD cycle connects and how controllers coordinate between your models, routes, and views. Once you're comfortable with CRUD flows, start using key Laravel controller features that elevate your code quality and efficiency. Try implementing route model binding to automatically inject model instances into controller methods, eliminating manual queries. Practice form request validation so your controllers remain clean while validation rules live in dedicated request classes. And experiment with applying middleware inside controller constructors, giving you fine-grained control over authentication, permissions, and route filtering across different actions. Finally, the most effective way to solidify your learning is to build a small CRUD app from scratch. For example, create CRUD operations for posts, products, or tasks. This comprehensive exercise allows you to put everything together: migration creation, model setup, resource controllers, route registration, validation, middleware, and blade views. By the end, you'll have a fully functional mini application that demonstrates your grasp of Laravel's controller system from end to end. This practice workflow mirrors real-world development and prepares you for larger production-level Laravel projects. Each step builds on the previous one, helping you develop confidence, skill, and a deeper understanding of how controllers drive the entire flow of a Laravel application.